Hello, everybody. My name's James, and welcome to a very special People's Poll podcast this week. My head is a little bit fried with Super League news, etc., going on in the football world at the moment. So, as promised, hopefully a good news story for you today. Let me introduce you to our returning Norwich City correspondent, Mark Hammond at FPL_Badger. How are you, Mark?
Hi, James. I'm very well, thank you. Cheers for having me back.
You're very welcome, mate. Welcome back. I was going to say the big time, but it's probably not the right words to use at the moment. Welcome back to the Premier League. How are your emotions at the moment, mate?
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird one, the whole sort of COVID scenario in any case. But Saturday was strange because I think we would have liked to have gone up by winning ourselves in the evening. And in all honesty, we expected probably Swansea and Brentford to, have won their games, and it would have been all down to us. But because they didn't, it was a bit of a strange one. So yeah, I started off not really following their results, but obviously towards the end there were some sweaty palms, and last sort of 10 minutes, and the Swansea game seemed to go on forever because I think Brentford had finished 0-0, and yeah, the other one seemed, I think it was 98th minute, and obviously you just checking for notifications, refreshing Twitter, all sorts of things. And then in the end, that was that. So not like being in the ground, but still, it's a good feeling.
That really happened, that kind of nervous moment. You knew you were going up anyway, right?
Yeah, but we did, but it's on the day itself. Like you're not sure when, sort of thing. So it's playing on your mind. I was honestly thinking it would happen Saturday night. Watching the game, and then I'd have got the emotions in the evening. But instead, it's much earlier, and wasn't probably ready for it. In that.
I want to, just before we go on to the club a little bit, I do want to touch on one thing because you went to a test game, didn't you? Was it one game?
I did.
What
Yeah,
was that?
Nottingham Forest.
What was that like? Because for the listeners who perhaps don't know you so well, you've gone all over the country watching Norwich, and you've been away plenty watching England as well. What was that experience like for you?
It's one of those. I'm glad I'd done it. It was a good opportunity to do that, because obviously that was the only time I'd had the chance. And as it turned out, there were no more sort of spectators at games after that. So yeah, I'm glad I did it. But the whole experience was a strange one. You'll get that when you obviously go to Wembley, and that you've got to get there a lot earlier. You've got to sanitize. You've got to have a couple of ticket checks, ID against ticket. Yeah, you're queuing a lot more than you normally would, but it's socially distanced queuing. You go to buy something, they only accept a debit card. So the whole sort of thing, concourses usually are packed, aren't they? There's people jumping around, acting like clowns, there's singing, there's this, there's that. It wasn't anything like that. It was, the only thing you can liken it to really was a pre-season game. Um, very little atmosphere, a little bit in patches, but it's strange because nobody was sat in the row in front, no one behind. You've got gaps to the side of you as well, and it's strange. That's the only way to
Did you
sort of
get any
describe it.
singing going or anything?
But a little bit, yeah, a little bit, particularly in the second half. But it was a 2-1 game, so it was a, sort of a close one really. So there wasn't it wasn't like it was all done and dusted early. So I think a little bit of singing came by virtue of the fact that maybe the players needed a little bit of a spur on.
Okay, let's take us back to the start of the season journey. You came and
Yeah.
did a podcast with us with FPL Terrier pre-season. Can you think back to then and what your hopes were for this season? And I guess, have they just been completely exceeded, or did you have real hopes that you would come back? Because obviously the way you finished the Premier League season in the lockdown period was pretty depressing.
It was very. I didn't enjoy the games after Project Restart. There's no way I possibly could because we was well off of it. It wasn't even close. Some of the games, it was pretty pathetic attempt at staying up in the end. Um, so yeah, I do remember saying on the podcast prior to the season starting, I don't think we'll piss the league. Um,
But you pissed the league.
and yeah, we pissed the league. And I thought Swans. I did say I thought Swansea would win it because from what I knew of the Championship, they'd sort of been a contender and a strong sort of outfit. I thought we'd do well, but not this well. I think just change the mentality. Daniel Farke has done well to get a team, largely the same group of players who have lost a lot of games, and to sort of turn that around pretty quickly. We didn't start, brilliantly. Like it took we lost to Derby in the fourth game, and then I remember after that the fans weren't turning on him, the media weren't, but they did say the next three are really important because we had Rotherham, Birmingham, and Wickham, all teams who are down there struggling at the bottom now. And the media basically said, look, we need at least sort of 7 points from the next 9. We did that. We won all of them, and that sort of kick-started us. So it took a little bit. Not, I would say it took too long, but it took a few games just to get things going, get the cobwebs off, and then we was good after that.
Have you been the best team in the league this season? I know obviously it shouldn't lie at the end of a league season, but do you believe you're deserving winners?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I would say that, but I do think as well. I mean, from the teams I've seen, it's only Watford who've come close. Swansea and Barnsley play really good football. I'm not over endeavoured with Brentford. I think they rely heavily on Tony, and a lot of them other teams. They really are looking at what they are, playoff teams, and obviously now to see what Watford are doing. Although they lost at the weekend, they're a strong team. That the same teams who went down come back up, because obviously if you're going to throw Bournemouth into it, who've now won 5, could well be that you see the same faces.
There's a lot of people who will be looking at this and going, and I saw some negative comments on Saturday when the promotion was confirmed as well, and it's a bit of a, not them again. How do you feel about, because I think, am I right in saying you've got the most promotions to the Premier League now? I think it's 5, I want to say. Yeah. There's a perception of you're the ultimate yo-yo club now, suddenly. How do you feel when people describe you as that?
I mean, from a fan's point of view, it's frustrating to obviously go down, but it is quite exciting because obviously you get the promotions and relegations with it. It's not like, very rarely do we have a season where there's not something to play for. I do feel some of obviously the relegations have been avoidable, i.e. a bit more money being spent. Obviously different circumstances for each relegation. And this board now have got a few relegations under their belt. So, people are fully aware of this time, really, we need to make it count, because I don't think there are any excuses now. Although, yeah, we've got COVID hit us for X amount of money, which every team has, promotion bonuses, but this time there is no debt. We've had a training ground built. Any, money that's available now has to be spent on recruiting properly and doing things a lot better than before. So, yeah, I get the yo-yo thing. I don't think it's just us. I think there's teams obviously like Fulham, West Brom, who, very much similar sort of cases, really. It could well be in a year's time that, I'm keeping my seat warm for Dara or Gemma, and the same thing happens in reverse, It wouldn't surprise me, but, you can never say. It all depends as well who comes up with us and recruitment.
Well, is there that? Is it? Are the teams that are coming up this season? Because if I think back to the last 3 title winners, the excellent Wolves team that came up, yourselves, who did brilliantly when you came up 2 years ago, and obviously Leeds, there was less expectation definitely about your club than Leeds and Wolves, because I mean, we'll talk about the goals conceded tally in a little bit, but there was a very clear, they're going to concede a lot of goals when you came up. With what you're saying about the other clubs, would it be fair to say that this might be one of the weaker sets of teams that might come? Because I hear a lot of people argue against that and actually really positive, but they'll seem to have been slipping up over themselves. I mean, Swansea and Brentford drew so you could get promoted. Watford lost at Luton at the weekend. It feels like they're falling over a little bit. It doesn't feel any great momentum about who might be coming up this year.
The league isn't as strong as it was 2 years ago. I think I'd certainly say that. I think we're a better team and we're better equipped, but I do think when you throw the battle we had with Sheffield United and Leeds, very hard league to get out of at the time. Whereas if this year, I feel like although we've been good, there have been occasions where we've sort of won games and not always been at the races. A lot of it's momentum, but I don't think it's quite as strong a league as it has been in previous years.
Just literally looking at comparison of your performance 2 years ago to this season, there's some striking things quite simply in goals scored and goals against. So admittedly, you've got 4 games still to go and capable of hitting 100 points. Actually, I think you need 10 points from the final 4, I think, to get 100 points. So you're likely to win the title as well. It's only 4 points shorter than the total you got 2 years ago. Goals scored this season, 66. 93 scored 2 years ago. So what's that, 27 goals less?
Yeah.
And goals conceded 31 this season. 2 years ago, 57. So you've scored 27 fewer, but conceded 26 fewer. Is this a very different Norwich to the team that came up 2 years ago?
Yeah, gone are the 4-3 basketball matches with late goals. And yeah, it's not been as exciting. Not just obviously because I've been watching on iFollow at home and that, but I feel like 2 years ago it was all ahead of the plan really. There was a 5-year plan in place, and we achieved what we did a lot earlier. And the club wasn't really ready for it. We didn't really have the players in place. It was so exciting, but a lot of them games we probably were a bit lucky to win. And like I say, they were swinging matches sometimes. And this year, I think we've been obviously. Buendia and Pukki will get all the plaudits, and yeah, rightly so. But the defence has been immense. It really has. Efficient, very, very good defensively, and consistent as well. Really consistent.
I want to obviously come on to some of those players, but I do want to talk about the manager and the owners a little bit. Do you think, in hindsight, Farke was lucky to survive last season in the Premier League? Was there a bit of you at the end felt, because I mean, Sheffield United fans will be going through this now where they feel like their manager's gone and it's kind of ruined their expectations of coming back. Was the feeling amongst Norwich fans that your best chance of coming back would be to keep Daniel Farke?
Yeah, definitely. There was at no point. I feel like we felt for him as well, because we listened to what he comes out with in the press conferences, and even the sporting director Stuart Webber turned around and said, like, we've sent him to war without any bullets. It would be a miracle if we stay up. And there was all this sort of stuff coming out which made it feel like a free hit. Farke's already come out and said, like, it won't be a miracle if we stay up in the future. It would be a battle and it's going to be hard, but it's no longer a miracle. We've moved on from that. So, yeah, if you compare him to other clubs, yeah, he probably was lucky in that grand scheme of things. It's quite rare for a manager, for example, if you take betting odds, for somebody who's bottom of the league, hasn't won for X amount of games to still be in a job. It's quite unheard of. But from our point of view, it's like, well, we're still actually like playing half decent stuff, although we couldn't defend the toffee. He was making it, like, certainly when the crowds were there, we was competitive in most of the games. And very rarely did we sort of, I think a couple of times, obviously, we got hiding while the crowds were there. But I don't think anyone could have come in and done a better job, really.
No, and I think there is a little bit of that from a neutral perspective. That, I mean, we obviously polled some stuff on Twitter on the weekend, and 61% of people, if we exclude the 10% of Norwich and Ipswich fans who voted, 61% said, I like the way they play, in terms of rather than, I'm not them again. So more people were pro, Norwich coming back. And I think it does feel like a fixture where you think, well, do you know what, I'm going to watch a football match today. But then what we saw, obviously, that restart period in the Premier League, I mean, you finished on like 21 points, right? Disastrous, really.
Well, it's crap, wasn't it? Yeah.
But there's a perception, I think, going back to the promotion team and the way, obviously, you started with obviously the Man City game, but everyone will remember when you beat them in game week 5. There's a perception that you're going to come up and entertain again. But some of these numbers, in terms of goals scored and goals against, really suggest that actually you might not. And what you're saying about even Farke saying the expectation is I don't know. Is the expectation to stay up?
Yeah, I think it is now.
Would you be disappointed if you went back down? I mean, that
Yeah.
goes without saying, but
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
is your expectation to stay up?
Yeah, it has to be. It has to be now. It's totally different because of all the spin that's come out of the club saying this is part of the project and it's a long term, well, it's a mid to long term thing. They're coming out with different vibes to what they were sort of 2 years ago. So yeah, there are no more excuses really. It's a case of now the recruitment's got to be a lot better in the summer. Because last time it weren't good enough. They let the manager down with the recruitment. It weren't anywhere near good enough, both in the summer prior and in the January transfer window, where we signed a striker and a number 10. Both were rubbish. So yeah.
Can we expect that investment to come this time? Is that what you're saying? Norwich are going to spend this summer?
I don't think we're going to spend a huge amount at all. I think last time we spent 750,000, which was never going to get us anywhere, was it? And that was on Sam Byram. This time we might. Well, actually, I will say before sort of say how much I think we'll spend. We've got a obligation actually. Now we've got promoted to buy Ben Gibson for 8 million from Burnley and Dimitris Giannoulis, who's a Greek international. He joined us in January and he now has had his the clause has been activated. So we've now signed him for 8 million as well. He's a full Greek international. We never replaced Jamal Lewis initially. So that is where he comes in. He looks pretty decent. So that's £16 million already, which is
15.25 million more than 2 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. So we have moved along since then. But there needs to be more. And I think the only way we're going to spend more is to sell one of our sort of 2 crown jewels, if you like.
Let's talk about them a little bit because I did a Patreon podcast with James Roberts from the Championship Express about a month ago on Patreon. And he said that you'd said that you think Buendia will leave this summer. Is that right?
I think
I've been misquoted.
No, not at all, really. I mean, I think we'll certainly lose one of him and Aarons, who is now Aarons, but we'll come on to that
Max
in a minute.
Aarons.
Yeah, there was a story there, and I'll mention that in a minute. But the thing is, last summer we sold the cheaper of the assets who were in demand, which was obviously Godfrey and Lewis. People couldn't afford Aarons and Buendia. Now we don't need the money any more than we did last summer. So it comes down to how badly the clubs want them. If they're going to really pay 40-50 million pounds, then that's what it's going to cost, And the club's getting linked with them. It's not, for example, with Buendia, Arsenal was sniffing around, and you think, okay, well, he could probably do a bit better. But now Atletico Madrid are sniffing around, and you just think, this guy's decent. So
why did he stay last summer? He's not come down with you to get you back up to then leave. It doesn't seem to make much sense.
No, but it's purely teams were priced out. We was asking silly money. We didn't, it was better for us to sell the players like Godfrey and Lewis, who, they was cheaper, but that sort of balanced the books and sort of, they were replaceable. So if you think, well, we got 25 million for Godfrey and spent 8 on Gibson, and same with Giannoulis, we've made profit on that with Lewis, and it's not too much difference probably between the way them two play. So I just think it comes down to like asking a silly amount, and teams weren't prepared to do it. Now,
why would it not be a silly amount now then?
I think Buendia didn't perhaps do himself justice in the Premier League. Like, he had some brilliant games and like for XG and this and that. He scored 1 goal, didn't he? I was quite critical of him for that.
You were, yeah. But we were looking at his numbers every week, and you'd look like top 5 chance creation. Like it wouldn't matter if you looked last 4 weeks, last 8 weeks. It didn't seem to matter. He was always there for chances created. And this year, it's really, 27 attacking returns. You're going to break a lot of people's hearts if you say he might go, mate.
Yeah, I mean, out of the two, I'd rather keep Buendia. Obviously, build the team around him. He's Cantwell sort of played well the last few weeks as well. So I think, well, if we can get, get the sort of three behind Pukki firing, and yeah, a lot comes down to that. I think basically Aarons is replaceable, and Buendia is probably not. But if the big boys come calling and they can offer ridiculous amounts of money, then it might be that we have to sell one or both to actually spend some money. So if you think, well, combined, them two might get us 80, 90 million, say, which sounds ridiculous, but it could be. That money would go a long way to buy, what, 6 players? We probably need that sort of amount to be competitive.
So you basically, it sounds like from what you're saying, you don't really expect the investment unless one of the two star players are sold,
Yeah,
basically.
I think so. I think, assuming we keep both of them, what we're going to spend, £20 million.
But that doesn't get you nothing now, mate.
It doesn't. No, it doesn't. And that's the train of thought now, thinking ahead, is that a lot of the players in our squad we saw last time were not good enough, like Stiepermann, Vrancic, Hernandez. None of them lot have hardly played in the championships, and then they're not going to be able to do it in the Premier League. So if I think, well, we need maybe 2 or 3 to the starting lineup and another, what, 3, 4, 5 to the squad, wherever the sort of the players going to come from that are going to improve us.
Who's been your best player this season?
I knew there was a reason you got me onto this podcast, James. You want me to say Ollie Skip, don't you?
But I don't know if you're going to say Ollie Skip. I think that you might say Oliver Skip.
I would say, if you'd have asked me probably 2 months ago, I would have said Ollie Skip. And any other season, it would probably be him. I just think Buendia in the last, probably since March, has kicked on ridiculously well. Since we played Brentford at home and beat them in what was supposedly a title showdown. Yeah, Buendia's been great. He's been so good. It would have to be Buendia, I think. Now, Skip would be a close second.
So your two, for those who might not know who Oliver Skip is, Oliver Skip's obviously a midfielder who's on loan from Tottenham at Norwich and done very well this season. Not an FPL consideration or anything like that. But is there then a chance that your two best players from this season might not be with you next year? Have you heard anything about Norwich's intention to try and take Skip on loan for another year? Because I think it would benefit him to play for you probably for one more year.
I'd love him. I'd love him to stay because he's everything we could have done with last year in terms of protecting the back four. We had Teddy, who is not mobile enough to be able to run and cover the fullbacks, and any sniff of danger, Skip's there. He's so switched on because if the fullbacks like Evans, for example, goes bombing off, he knows straight away he's got to cover that position, and he's just so clever with his thinking, and it's hard to sort of forget. He's such a easy to forget. He's such a young lad. He's only 21, something like that.
What is he? Is he a holding midfield player? Is he a central midfield player? What is he to you?
He's a holding for us. So he plays with McLean, with Kenny McLean, and he unbelievably he's made Kenny McLean look brilliant. Two of them combined so well, and I would have no issues playing them two together in the Premier League because Skip's obviously ready to do that, and I think that they complement each other well. The danger is that Skip's done so well for us. I think he might go straight into the Tottenham squad. You'd know better than me what's going on.
Well, not really, because you've obviously seen him play this year. So I mean, I've not seen as much of you this year, in all honesty, as I did 2 years ago when you came up. Actually, I first saw Oliver Skip as a 16-year-old playing the Checkatrade Trophy at Wimbledon. And he was the youngest player on the pitch, and he stood out like a sore thumb as the best player on the pitch by a mile. Clearly, years beyond his age, you could tell. He just had that. He kind of looks older than he is as well. He feels like when you watch him, it's watching an older player. Like he is very clued up about the game, very comfortable on the ball. I wouldn't call him flashy or anything. He's not going to be doing Cruyff turns in the centre of the pitch or anything. But in terms of tactically and system-wise,
Yeah.
I think he could be a great player, even for Tottenham.
Yeah.
When I saw him that night, I said I believed he'd go on to be better than Harry Winks. And at the time, Harry Winks was starting regularly for England. So I've always had quite high hopes for him. But is that realistic that he could play every week for Tottenham next year? Because I want you to say yes, mate, basically.
Yeah, I think so. I think he'll. I think he'll improve. I think he will. His energy, his range of passing, he's got everything. I'll give you an example. A couple of years ago, actually 3 years ago, maybe we had Harrison Reed on loan for a year from Southampton. I want to say
comparable, actually.
They're not, because Skip's much better. Skip's much better. If I would compare the loan at the time, in that one's a youngster, they're both youngsters. They have come to the lower leagues to get regular football, then to go back, and then maybe the next year. I just think Skip's been so good that I don't see Tottenham letting us have him, because he's actually come out. The only sort of snippet I've heard from Skip is that he wants to be playing regular football again, and if he can't get that at Tottenham, then I think he'd like to come back to Norwich. I've listened to him on a couple of podcasts, and they try to push him. Norwich will want him, there's no doubt about it. It's just obviously whatever Tottenham's intentions are, and obviously the news that has come out of Tottenham in the last sort of 24 hours, etc. There's no way of knowing exactly who's going to be in charge there and what their plans would be.
No, someone's going to want to look at him for sure.
Yeah. The only concern I'd have with Skip is that I'd want the business to be done early. I don't want us waiting 1 week before the season starts, still without a holding midfield player, and hope we can get Skip, and then we sign some old donkey who's crap, I want us, if we are going to get him, I'd rather it be done early. I'd love him to come back.
The problem is, whoever it is at Tottenham is obviously going to be a new manager who's probably perhaps doesn't even know who he is going to want to see him train properly for a few weeks. So if that's the player you want, you're going to have to wait. I think there's every chance that if Tottenham decide that he's probably not going to start regularly for them next year, they probably will send him back to you, because the relationship's been very good. I mean, you had Marcus Edwards off us a few years ago as well, which
I didn't go so well.
Honestly, it still breaks my heart to speak about Marcus Edwards. It's probably the most talented footballer I've ever seen. It's extraordinary.
He signed on loan. I think I saw him warm up once in front of me, and that was it.
But Farke sent him straight back, weren't he? Because of attitude problems and that. Yeah, but I mean, Ollie's a proper professional, I think. Good. You've cheered me up, because I've had no good news over the last 48 hours. So thanks very much for that, Mark. Let's talk about Pukki Party. We're about to see that stupid, ridiculous gif all over our timelines again on Twitter.
I tweeted that a couple of times Saturday. I hate it myself, but I thought things for promotion, I'll get away with it.
He's obviously fondly and perhaps less fondly remembered by a lot of people. The majority of us all bought him ahead of game week 2 last year, or those who didn't, like me, bought him in game week 3 out of necessity after his hat-trick against Newcastle. I felt watching him towards the end of last season, and I've not seen a lot of him this season, and he's been in super form the last couple of months. I felt that he wasn't good enough for Premier League level, was the conclusion that I came to. How do you feel about him now?
I disagree with. I know you thought that way because I heard you say that some other time, but I think he is good enough, because I think we just need someone to relieve the burden of it all can't all come down to Pukki. If you forget all the goals he's got in the Championship, 20 plus goals twice now. If you think of the 11 he got in the Premier League, mostly all before Christmas.
That's not even bad. 11 goals. It's decent.
That's what I was going to say. So I've wrote down here. Morpay's on 8, Shea Adams on 7, Chris Wood's on 7, Richarlison's on 6. So if Pukki's on 11, there's plenty of players in the Premier League who didn't get anywhere near enough sort of points and returns. I just think Pukki, from when he was in the Premier League, was a victim of his own sort of early success, really, from when he won that Premier League Player of the Month in August. And obviously, it was a slow regress after that, wasn't it? Up to the point where he got that toe injury at Leicester, and then we was never the same after that. So he sort of said he's got unfinished business. He wants to prove that he can do it. So fine.
I'm trying to think back. So he scored at Liverpool opening day. Then there was a hat-trick against Newcastle. I want to say he scored against Chelsea. I want to say he lost at West Ham and didn't score. And then he scored against Man City. So that's 6 goals in the first 5. So wouldn't that then be only 5 goals in the last 33?
Yeah, including a penalty at Tottenham.
Would be including a penalty against Tottenham. Yeah, brilliant. Someone always scores against us, mate.
Actually, he got one disallowed against Tottenham as well, didn't he? In the home game, that
should have counted.
The dodgy VAR decision.
Yeah,
I get it, but we need, for example, at the moment we've got Jordan Hugill as backup. He's sort of been a backup. He's come in for the odd game. He's looked all right at Championship level.
You mean Planet FPL legend Jordan Hugill?
That's the one. I knew you liked him. So
I've never seen him.
We need someone else, don't we? I mean, because if Pukki's injured or loss of form, whatever. For example, he didn't score our Project Restart. We can't have Pukki not scoring for 10 games or anyone, in that position, because we need to be able to have someone's backup and bring someone in for an alternative. So we've got to sign a striker in the summer, no doubt about it.
How's Todd Cantwell been this year?
He's slowly got better. Listened to him on a podcast recently, and he sort of admits the transfer speculation last summer got to him a little bit. He got taken out of the limelight a couple of games early on in the season because he just didn't handle it well. And I don't know whether he thought that he was better than what he actually is. But for example, they're down, knuckled down, didn't let him bother him. Buendia and Cantwell, they got taken out of the limelight a little bit. It's been good. I've got no doubt he can do a job for us in the Premier League whatsoever. I think he'll stay.
Okay. What would be... So we're assuming Gibson will sign. I still find it fascinating you got Gibson, because you and I first spoke about Gibson in the January window when you win the Premier League and went, just take him on loan. Like, he's not doing anything at Burnley. You're going to sign him permanently, it sounds like 8 million or so. And this Greek lad whose name you're going to pronounce, because I don't know the player's name. Giannoulis, thank you. So is he centre back partner of Gibson?
No, Hanley's at the back.
And so Giannoulis is left back and Aarons he's right back. That's the first choice back four, is it?
Hanley has been brilliant this year. I don't think I've seen a transformation in a player. And again, it's a bit like the midfield where Skip and McLean complement each other. Gibson and Hanley are actually brilliant. On paper, Godfrey and Hanley are better than Gibson and Hanley, but they don't. Godfrey and Hanley just didn't work together. And Hanley actually, for his defence in the Premier League, only played about 16, 17 games. It was Godfrey and Zimmerman or Hanley. Hanley didn't get a good run of fitness or anything like that, a good run of games. So, but what I would say with Gibson and Hanley, I think they're fine defensively, but we need 2 more centre-backs to go with them.
Well, you went through the whole season, basically, without having one centre-back available, didn't you?
You need 4 centre-backs. Zimmerman at Premier League level is not good enough. I think Hanley, Gibson and 2 others. So, again, Norwich being Norwich, we'll probably sign 1. You just know it.
What about the goalie? Good enough? He's still in the Dutch squad, isn't he, Tim Krul?
Yeah. He was played... I think he played 3 of their games over. I think their number 1's injured, but I think he's their number 2 now, and he played all their games recently. He's fine, Premier League level. No. I mean, any other season, had it not been for the form of, who we've spoken about, I think he'd been with a shout of Player of the Year. But some games he's not had enough to do, but he's fine.
The thing with Krul is, because it's interesting, you think of Norwich coming up, and I really think there's little point us kind of discussing FPL assets when players might come and go and we don't know what prices they're going to be. But if you think about it, I think most people will be thinking about it and going, Aarons, Buendia, Cantwell, Pukki. But Krul is a penalty saving expert, isn't he, basically? And he should come, he'll be 4.5, surely. And he should come into consideration, I would have thought.
Yeah, possibly. Again, it comes down to fixtures and that sort of thing. But yeah, he's capable of save points, I guess. We know we'll have he'll be busier next year than what he was this year, definitely.
So if we assume, let's say Skip goes back on loan, him and McLean, is it 4-2-3-1 most commonly?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Still the same.
So Buendia, Cantwell, Pukki up front, and who's the missing name from your best
11? So the number 10 is still an issue. Steeperman has been injured a bit, in and out. But like I said, I don't think he's good enough Premier League level. Vrancic has played some games. So we signed Kieran Dowell last summer from Wigan. He's been injured for most of the season, but in the last month he's come in and he's took the shirt and he's looked fine. Scored a couple of goals.
Was he at Everton as a kid?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, really highly rated actually.
Yeah. He's had a few clubs. He was at Sheffield United on loan. He couldn't really get himself moving at any particular club. So got shipped out on loan here, there, and everywhere. Done well at Wigan, and we took a chance on him. Jury's out on obviously Premier League level. I think we'd probably need to sign someone in that position.
This is what it's going to come down to, isn't it, Mark, to close? Are you going to spend any fucking money or not? It's basically is what it's going to come down to. And the competition coming up with you this year might not be as strong as it had been in previous years. I look at it now, and in fairness, as I said, I was so impressed and when I watched you 2 years ago when you came up, and you were enjoyed to watch in those final games when you got promoted. It was like 3-2 or 3-1, 2-2 every other week. It was such fun watching you. I look at it at the moment, though, and I think for most people look at it and go, it's a similar squad to what got relegated. And you think of clubs like Burnley, Brighton, if we assume the current bottom three are going to go down for the Premier League, and you think, can I see a Norwich finishing above them? And at the moment, without the investment, I think that would probably be a bit of a struggle.
Yeah, I think it would at the moment, but like you say, we can only really come back here in the summer when we're talking about FPL assets and pricing and all that sort of thing, and look at where we are then. And obviously, then I can give an honest answer of where I think we are. Squad is there's gonna be comings and goings. Difficult to say. I think the plan is obviously is to do what Burnley did, to go down, come back up, and stay.
Well, that's the model, isn't it? Because they obviously did that with Sean Dyche. That's the model for going down, keeping faith with your manager, coming back as they did, and then building and sustainable. The size of the club is definitely capable of being. I mean, Burnley are proof of that themselves, aren't they? Let's be honest. So Norwich are definitely capable of being sustainable as a Premier League club. All the Ipswich listeners will be so delighted that I've said that. But I think the capability is there to be a sustainable Premier League club. But the biggest concern, I think, from the outside is, mate, we're not sure if you're going to get any investment at all, mate, from the backers of the club. Who makes the decisions there? Is it Delia?
Well, she's the major shareholder, but she ain't got no money in football terms. I think the one frustration that people might have with her is that obviously she wants to keep it, and it's quite, it's honourable thing that she wants to keep it close knit and, keep it within the local community and have this nice club. But, one thing we would say is that fans, we maybe need to keep one eye open for foreign investment if we are going to compete and that sort of thing. So it's all very well wanting to sort of be a nice, community club and all this, that, and the other. But if she hasn't got enough money, then maybe at some point in time there has to be, a time where she sells up and people do come in and spend some money. We know that can go one of two ways, and it might not be for the best, but for us to push on eventually. Some of these other clubs we're competing against are different level, aren't they?
Yeah, tell me about it. Let's not do that conversation again. Mark, absolute pleasure. Before we go, I think you had a story on Max Aarons you wanted to share.
Oh yeah. So basically, in case people think we're weird calling him Max Aarons, this story came out a couple of months ago, and it was never even a story. He was always Max Aarons. He's got a cousin who plays for Huddersfield called Rolando. So he did an interview and he pulled someone up on the interview and basically said, I'm Rolando Aarons. So then this has then reached sort of the local journos down this end who have actually had a chat with Max and said, like, what is your surname? And he's, well, my name's Max Aarons, but Max Aarons has never been one to sort of do many interviews and all that sort of thing. Even if you watch him on the pitch, he don't really talk much. He's quite a sort of a humble, quiet fella. So he's like, yeah, that is my name, Aarons, but I've never made a big deal of it. But the ironic thing is, he did actually a video meet and greet when he was in the youth team and said, and he sort of, when they come up to the camera and sort of introduce themselves, and he was like, I'm Max Aarons. So you know. And this was
I
him at
love
sort of
that.
17, 18 years old. Like he got pulled on that, and he basically just said like he just found it easier just to say like
Well,
because people already knew him as that at one point, so he just like let it go. But now everyone's had to change the way they say it, even the commentators and all that sort of thing. So it's a bit hard to get used to.
how high up the list is he, Max Aarons, in terms of England right back pecking order?
He was about seventh the last time I
About
worked it
seventh.
out.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
cool.
I think he joked that himself as well. He basically said he's got no chance, but
Do you think his height will restrict him from playing for a top club? With respect,
I don't know. I don't know. There's a lot of teams, you know. If I speak about Atletico and Arsenal, who were in for Buendia, you know, PSG, Bayern, Barcelona have all been linked with him. So I don't know. It might be the foreign game is more suited to
he's
him.
definitely better than any of the clowns I've got, mate. I can assure you of that.
Thank
On that bombshell, Mark, thank you very much for your time. You can give Mark a follow on Twitter
you.
at FPL_Badger. And obviously, Mark will be rejoining us regularly next season on Clash of the Correspondents. Tomorrow will be Sky Fantasy Football. We've got COTC on Thursday, Leeds versus Manchester United with FPL Tactician and Is My Cat playing. And we'll have another full podcast on Friday, reviewing whatever the fucking latest is with this daft franchise league and reviewing the Premier League games between Monday and Thursday. But other than that, thanks again to Mark. Cue music, please, man child.